Hi guys, it's Reagan and it's literally almost 1:30 in the morning, but I'm wearing a bra and earrings and I had inspiration and motivation, so you gotta get things done when you can. I wanted to talk about the books that made me cry in 2020. I kind of just wanted to do this because in my last video I talked about my 3 favorite books of the year and how I cried in all of them, but those were not the only ones that I cried in, so let's just get into it. So first up we have The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater, and this is the last book in the Raven cycle. So we're following the Gangzy, and they're like a real Gangzy now by this point, and I just love them so much. And I think I more so cried because it was the end, because as you know, if you've read the first sentence of the first book, someone is going to die. So it's not like shocking. We know through the whole series like someone is going to die, but I still sobbed like I didn't know it was going to happen, because just this is one of those books where you really fall in love with the characters and the group, and even though the plot is like what the heck is going on sometimes, you're still just in love with what the characters are doing. So then we have Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I talked about this in my last video, but actually the first time I read this book I did not cry, or at least I don't remember crying, and if I did cry it wasn't like a sob, it was more just like a, oh my eyes are wet type of thing. But I loved it so much that I told my friends, I'm gonna force you to read this by reading it out loud to you. And so that's how I read it the second time. It took a while longer, but my friend and I would get on FaceTime and read it back and forth to each other. And so when we got to the end, I was a mess. And again, I had already read the book, so I knew what was going to happen. It wasn't shocking. I would almost understand it more if I sobbed the first time, you know? But the second time, I was just a mess. It was an ugly cry, truly. And I was the one reading. I don't even know how I got through that. So next up we have the Song of Achilles, which again, if you saw my last video, you already knew this. And also if you read the Song of Achilles, you already knew this, because how could I not cry? Have you seen my Song of Achilles video? I cried in that, and I wasn't even reading it. I had already finished it. Just thinking about it made me cry. And I've gotten to a point where I can think about it and not tear up. So we are growing. But the first, well, I've only read it one time. I don't know if I can put myself through that again. But the one and only time that I read it, I sobbed, and then I thought I was done sobbing, and then I got to the last page. I'm not even exaggerating. The literal last page had me sobbing. Everything about this book is beautiful, perfect, amazing. And the build up to the end, like, it's impossible not to cry. So then we have All the Bright Places, which I despised. I did not like this book. I read the whole thing just because it was short, and I wanted to watch the movie, which was also not good. I still cried. If you know the subject matter of the book, you could probably understand why. When the thing happens, it was really sad, so I did cry. I think I cried in the movie as well, but yeah, that's why I don't want to say that all the books that make me cry are my favorites, because it's not true. Like, sometimes something that happens is just really sad, and you kind of think about it in terms of like real life, and it kind of gets to you, you know? So I didn't like this book, but it still made me cry. Next up we have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and there was one specific part that just had me shook. I just brushed my teeth and then I drank this lemon juice. Not a good combination. Anyways, so there was a specific part in Evelyn Hugo where I was like, not this. And I was reading in the bath and I just started crying. It wasn't a hard cry like some other books produced, but it was still a cry. I really recommend this book. This is one of those where I could see like if people didn't cry, I would understand. But you know, Leah cried like 8 times. So I also understand how the book could just also make you just, I don't want to say sob, I keep saying that. Wail? Should I say wail? Let's get a thesaurus out. What's next? Oh, Monday's not coming. Monday's not coming. Oh my god. I cried the first time I read it. I did not cry on the reread, but there was a part at the end, and probably not the part you're expecting if you've read the book, or if you read the book, you probably won't think this is the part that made me cry. I was reading on the couch on my phone. I had it as an ebook, and then I had to buy it as a physical book because it's just so good. But I remember Leah and RC saying it made them cry, and that was the whole reason that I picked up the book. I was like, I think I can make it through this without crying. I pulled a Bridge to Terabithia on myself where I picked it up knowing that other people have cried and that I'm a big crier, and said to myself, this won't make me cry. And then what did I do? The part that I cried at, I think people would not really expect, because there is another part that just made me feel empty inside. So I kind of have this emotion, I guess, where sometimes when I read things, I go like beyond crying. I don't even cry, but on the inside I feel like just so void of emotion, and it's almost worse because it's at least crying, I'm getting it out, you know? Monday's Not Coming kind of provides both of those emotions. I cried and I also was like, wow, this literally makes me feel so empty inside. I'm so sad. I think that's what makes it one of my favorites of the year. It was just so good, and it makes you feel so many things. Okay, so then we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And this book, it's hard for me to explain because it wasn't a favorite, but I didn't hate it. I didn't dislike it. Like, I really did like this book, but I think my problem with it is that it's very slow, which I don't mind because I'm very much a character-driven reader, so I don't mind slow books. I think the Infernal Devices is pretty slow, but you get to know the characters so well and you get to love them so much that it doesn't matter that it's slow. And I think the problem with Addie LaRue is that it's so slow, but I also don't really care about the characters. I really liked Henry, but I feel like we didn't get to know him like well enough, you know? The only character we really got to know was Addie LaRue, and she was just kind of meh for me. Like, I have no feelings about her. But this book really hit something within me because I have this really deep fear of being forgotten. And I haven't said it on here. I did mention it on Twitter, but I lost my brother this year, a couple months ago. And there was this part in the book that made me think about how scared I am of forgetting him. And I know that I won't like forget him, like forget that he existed or anything, but just like forget what his voice sounds like, or even like what he looked like without having to look at pictures, you know. Reading it after that happened was an experience because, you know, Addie LaRue is forgotten by everyone, and if you've read the book, you know at the end what happens. Anyways, the last book that has made me cry so far this year. This year's not over. I still have 10 books to read, so we could have more in this list later on. What a great segue for me to mention that my actual last book that made me cry of 2020 was Beach Read. But the last book so far is Birmingham by Anthony Grooms. I read this for class, which is shocking, but I read this one and it was about Birmingham during the Civil Rights Movement, and I actually learned a lot that I did not know. And since we were reading it for school, there were a lot of supplementary things to watch and read to go along with it, and I feel like watching those things and reading the book just really made it more impactful. I got really emotional reading it just because the civil rights movement was a moment, and we still have a lot to go through to get to where we need to be. But it really takes you into that time in history. And I think most of the books I read for school that I do like, I like them because I read them for school. So I can't tell you how it would feel if I picked this up on my own. But in the situation that I was reading it in, where we got to discuss it in the discussion boards, I did a project over it, and watching the material that went along with it, I really enjoyed it, and it brought me to tears, as did the other books that I mentioned in this video. So that is all for this video. If you want to comment but don't want to go out of your way to say a lot, because I know sometimes I just don't feel like typing, you can leave a crying emoji. Or if you do feel like maybe answering a question, let me know which books made you cry this year. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, wear that mask, stay hydrated, and don't drink lemon juice after you just brush your teeth. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.